You're listening to a Roddenberry podcast.
This episode of Mission Log is sponsored by Factor. Head to factormeals.com/missionlog50 and use code missionlog50, that's 50, to get 50% off your first box. That's code missionlog50 at factormeals.com/missionlog50 to get 50% off your first box.
Mission Log, a Roddenberry Star Trek podcast, episode 499, Displaced.
Welcome into another episode of Mission Log, a Roddenberry Star Trek podcast. I'm John Champion.
And I'm Norman Lau. Each week on Mission Log, we explore an episode of Star Trek, picking it apart for morals, meanings, and messages, and then asking ourselves if the whole thing stands the test of time.
This week, Displaced, the one where the crew of Voyager has moved from their current location to a different one. You might even say that they've been displaced.
That's the most convenient title ever.
It really is. I love it when they can do that in one word. I'll be back with trivia in a moment, but first, Norman wants to tell all of you how to reach us.
Mission Log is a conversation about Star Trek. Drop us a line at missionlog@roddenberry.com and join us on Twitter and Facebook at MissionLogPod. While you're at it, leave us a review and a rating at Apple Podcasts or your favorite podcast platform. And please remember, your comments could be used on Mission Log or Engage on the Roddenberry YouTube channel. And now, we're going to displace everything for John Champion and his trivia.
All right, here we go. We have an episode written by Lisa Klink. As we get closer to the end of Season 3, we've had a handful of episodes where Lisa gets the sole credit. Prior to this one, we discussed her work on Favorite Son and Blood Fever, most recently. Her title will change in the next season, and we will catch more of her work then. This was directed by Alan Croker, and this is just the second of Alan's work on Voyager. We covered Before and After recently, and he will stick around for 11 more episodes. More to come from him in the Delta Quadrant, and then it's off to Enterprise. Let's meet our guest stars. We see a little more of a Voyager crew member who we first met briefly in Blood Fever. That would be Ensign Lang, played by Deborah Levin. Now let's meet our visiting aliens, rounding out a guest cast made up entirely of actors with multiple Star Trek appearances. On the Nerian vessel, also imprisoned, is a reptilian named Jarlath, played by Mark L. Taylor. We met Mark once before in his human form when he appeared in the third season TNG episode, The Ensigns of Command. Then there are the Nerians themselves. Talene is played by Nancy Youngblood. You may not recognize her here, but Nancy had a prominent role that we already discussed in DS9's 7th season episode, Once More Unto the Breach. She was under Klingon makeup there as Kolana. In chronological order, that was her most recent and final Star Trek appearance. James Noah plays Rislin, and here again is a returning player on Star Trek. In the 4th season of DS9, James appeared as the Trill scientist Dr. Hanor Pren in the episode Rejoined. And finally, there is Damar. No, not that Damar. Played by Kenneth Teagar. Now, Kenneth is a very recognizable character actor, even if his name isn't at the tip of your tongue. Very recently, he has appeared in shows like The Marvelous Miss Maisel and in The Man in the High Castle. But earlier in his career, you might have seen him in Man from Atlantis, Wonder Woman, and Barney Miller, or in features like The Avengers and Lethal Weapon 2 and 3. And we did see him before on Star Trek. In the first season of TNG, he was uncredited but unmistakable in the episode Symbiosis as Margon. So far, those are his only 2 Trek credits.
Welcome to the Delta Quadrant. People are going to just start showing up uninvited for dinner, right about now.
Prologue. Tom and B'Elanna have been working out with a Klingon martial arts program on the holodeck. He's amused. She's really worked up. As their argument escalates, they are surprised to see an alien suddenly materialize in the corridor with them, asking, "Where am I?" Act 1. The alien is humanoid, looks like a kindly older gentleman, and he seems confused and worried. He says he was just walking home and then, boom, abducted and ends up here. On Voyager, it's cold and too bright for him, but Tom and B'Elanna assure him that they won't harm him, and they take him to sickbay to make sure he's okay and to warm him up. The alien, Damar, is still confused about how he got here. He says he's Nerian, and his homeworld doesn't sound familiar to any place Voyager has encountered yet, but the crew will look for a way to get him home. In the meantime, the EMH calls for Kes, but she's missing. Just disappeared off Voyager at the same moment Damar arrived. In engineering, Harry and B'Elanna try to work out location data about the Nerian homeworld. They don't have much to go on, but just as Harry starts some new tests, he completely disappears. And coincidentally, another confused Nerian appears on Voyager. Then another. For each one who does, another Voyager crew member goes missing. Security doesn't have any leads to follow, and then Tuvok himself disappears. It seems to be an even exchange, with Voyager crew propping up on a Nerian colony just as a Nerian disappears. But everybody is in the dark as to what's causing it. There's a polaron burst, then boom, they're gone. At least the Nerians aren't aggressive or violent, they just keep showing up, and Voyager crew keep disappearing. And that makes Janeway worried and very suspicious. Act 2. Half of Voyager's crew is gone, and more Nerians keep appearing, most of them sequestered to cargo bays. Rislin, a Nerian scientist who appeared on Voyager, has shared some theories with B'Elanna, one of them leading to a wormhole, perhaps, and then Janeway herself dematerializes just as she's trying to find Rislin for more information. Neelix has just found Rislin over the complaints of Voyager's cold, humid environment, and he agrees to revisit engineering to confer with the crew there. On the bridge, it's just Chakotay in command and Ensign Lang, who is now security chief. And she reports that Neelix has disappeared. That leaves 40 of Voyager's crew and more than 100 Nerians. But that also means that Chakotay and Lang seriously need to lock things down, like sensitive ship resources and systems. Rislin is sharing his insights with B'Elanna, but he's not exactly being helpful. The more progress B'Elanna makes, she gets more suspicious that the thing causing the crew to disappear is not a natural phenomenon. So the jig is up, and Rislin quickly knocks out a crewman, takes his phaser, and points it at B'Elanna. She can't fight back and soon finds herself transported to where the majority of Voyager's crew have gone, all in a pleasantly curated indoor-outdoor plaza watched over by Nerian guards. Act 3. The guards take B'Elanna's comm badge, then leave, and there she is with all the others. Tom, Captain Janeway, Kes, everyone who was taken from Voyager. This place, and others like it, are kind of an idealized simulation to hold them, and presumably others, but why? Back to Voyager, there are only 12 of the crew left, and yeah, the Nerians are doing their best to take over all systems. They succeed, too, when they make their way to the bridge and take out the small crew there, and engineering, and everywhere else. Chakotay and a handful of people left try to sabotage ship systems, including the warp core, but they can only hold out for so long. In a last ditch, Chakotay makes his way to sickbay in order to download the EMH to his mobile emitter, and lucky him, he palms it just as the Nerians catch up with him and send him off to join the rest of the crew. In the pleasant artificial environment, the EMH is reactivated by B'Elanna, and it's time for the entire Voyager crew to get to know their captors. They are in one of 10 artificial environments covering 4 square kilometers. Those are all surrounded by wilderness, an almost too perfect wilderness that's seemingly designed to keep them in. Soon enough, a few Nerians, led by a woman, Talene, enter and explain that the Voyager crew are indeed captive, but it's such a nice cage they're in with food and entertainment. The Nereans do this, slowly take over other people's property and lock them up. If Janeway knows what's good for her and her crew, she'll start to show some gratitude. And with that, Talene and her guards disappear as quickly as they appeared. The suspicion that this place is a hologram is easily confirmed when Harry notices a little shimmer, a discrepancy in some of the foliage. Then from that break in the illusion, a reptilian alien steps out, introducing himself as Jarleth, their neighbor. Act 4. As far as alien reptiles go, Jarleth is a really nice one. His environment next door is very different, drier, warmer. He and his people got there in the same way as the Voyager crew, slowly displaced by Nereans until there were none of his people left. Janeway tries to get some information about possible escape routes, but Jarleth says that probably won't happen, and even the last people who tried to escape all ended up dying from a plague. But Janeway is persistent, and Jarleth is easily bribed with food. Maybe he can show them how to find other portals like the one that connects his environment to theirs. That gives B'Elanna an idea to reprogram the EMH, enough to see the fluctuations in their hollow environment. Meanwhile, Tuvok creates weapons out of some electronic parts scavenged by Neelix. Soon, they have their chance. The EMH, led by B'Elanna, spots another portal in the simulation, and that leads Janeway, Tuvok, B'Elanna, and Tom, along with Jarleth, into a dark corridor. The truth becomes clear very quickly. While Tom and B'Elanna get a view of many different biospheres, Tuvok and Janeway find a kind of control center which they are able to translate through Voyager's downloaded database. They discover that there are a total of 94 different environments where they are, all acclimated for the myriad prisoners held by the Nereans. What's more, they're all being held on a giant ship somewhere in space. Janeway attempts to locate a bridge or a central command center, but the more she digs, she sets off an alarm. Act 5. Talene calls her compatriots on Voyager to let them know what happened and that she may need to use force to get their captives to comply. Meanwhile, Jarleth surrenders at the first sign of Nerean guards, but that's good enough for Janeway and Tuvok to see one of the guards use a translocator device to send Jarleth back to his habitat. Once the guard is dispatched with a Vulcan nerve pinch, it's time to see if they can make the translocator work to their advantage. But Voyager is now on the way at warp speed with Nerean reinforcements, just as Tom and B'Elanna are doing their best with makeshift weapons to fight off the guards. They take refuge in a frozen habitat, hostile to the Nereans, who prefer warmer climates. Just their luck, the guards who followed them quickly succumb to the cold and the last shot of their homemade phaser. Janeway and Tuvok figure out how the translocator works in time to detect Tom and B'Elanna and rescue them from an icy death by teleporting them back to the Federation habitat. But Voyager is on its way, full of angry Nereans, and they are in for a surprise when Janeway starts transporting them to that same frozen habitat. She's in control of their systems now, and unless they all want to freeze to death, they should probably hand over Voyager. Oh, and while she's at it, release all the other prisoners, too. They've got no room to negotiate, so Janeway wins and disables their translocator device. Now back on board Voyager, the crew has some downtime, leading Tom and B'Elanna to warm up in the holodeck. Literally, because they were cold, remember? But also figuratively, because, the end.
That was a wonderful recap, John. I hope you didn't have to displace too many of the salient points of the plot for your recap.
You know what? I purposely displaced a few of those plot points, which maybe we'll get to in a little bit. But yes, yes.
No, it was nice and tight like a tiger, as we say. For those of you who are playing the home game.
Uh-huh.
A nice little scene with Tom and B'Elanna. Mm-hmm. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm going to pull some trivia here out of my brain.
Sure.
I do remember when in Deep Space Nine, when Jadzia was doing some Batleth training with Worf, mm-hmm. She manufactured her Batleth to a very specific height, weight, dimension in the holodeck.
Yeah.
So for somebody like B'Elanna, who doesn't embrace Klingon culture, why would she have a bat'leth? And why wouldn't she create one in the holodeck to her specifications?
Right. Because then you have to assume that she carried that thing with her as a Maquis. It's just always on her. Yeah. But yeah, I think you're right. I think Jadzia created one in the holodeck. And I think even in other Klingon simulations that we've seen, like sometimes Worf has had his, but then also used created weapons in the environment. So yeah, good question.
Yeah, just a question. I do love the workout clothes, though, at the beginning. I know that they're not... None of the workout clothes have been really Federation standard. So
yeah.
I like it when I see like new uniforms. They're cut well. They fit well. I'm kind of thinking about cosplay ideas. I dig these.
Oh, see, I'm just waiting for the day that on one of the modern or, Berman era Trek shows that we see like the TOS workout gear where it was just like the red tights.
Right.
That's it, maybe one day.
So be careful, folks, when you're maybe say in a convention and you see John wearing red tights, watch out for the backwards fall.
Right, exactly. Right.
He's performing the part.
Yes.
So Tom and B'Elanna are, I would say they're almost unnervingly calm when they just see an alien appear out of nowhere. I mean, you would think there would be security involved. Right?
Yeah, you would think you would immediately hear a security alarm. They would immediately call security. A force field would go up. Like, all these kinds of things. Yeah.
They're talking. Oh, hi, Mark. Like all of a sudden, there's this alien there. Like, would you like a coffee? Are you okay?
Yeah.
I don't know. A little unnerving that they weren't alarmed at all.
Well, maybe it's just like, well, he just seems like a nice old man. So,
That's it. It's the nice old man trick.
Yeah. Right, exactly. And by the way, in sickbay, I think the doctor says he raised the temperature to 45 degrees Celsius. That's 113 Fahrenheit.
It's warm.
Like that's the kind of thing that in Vegas just makes me pant and want to run into the nearest air-conditioned room. I can't imagine anybody getting around in Voyager in that.
Kudos to people who can do that in cosplay and not sweat. You're inhuman. I don't know how you do it. Yeah. Right. Great reaction by Harry/Garrett when B'Elanna asks him, "You don't think I'm hostile, do you? Do you?" Right? That, my friends, is the no-win scenario.
It really is.
Right?
Yeah, exactly. And I think the whole bit about B'Elanna's hostility, it is funny. And I did leave that out of the recap just because it's character bit. It's not really driving the plot. So I'm not really sure that it's going anywhere, but maybe that's the thing that we'll come back to in our discussion later. Maybe. I don't really know. But I love how one of those random Nerians materializes in Club Bro Med.
Right.
Because it's like they cannot not use that set now for every episode. And I just want to say, look, you built Chez Sandrine, you built the weird manor house that Janeway went to, but we have to make sure we use Club Bro Med every episode.
Somebody make us a GIF of like that John Travolta thing where he's kind of like looking around and behind him is Club Bro Med.
It's Club Bro Med.
Right. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
We need that.
Exactly. I think we just need to do Club Bro Med t-shirts, like that.
Totally.
That is going to be a take on its own life. Yeah.
You mentioned this before in trivia, but and when Tom said Damar with the two M's, I mean, heard Damar. It's Damar, right? So
yeah.
Now I
went back, I rewound it because I thought, well, wait, I read the name, maybe I misheard it. Maybe it's Damar. Maybe they're doing something to change it. Nope, no, it's Damar.
Yeah, and now I'm just wondering, okay, so they have Damar, now I have Casey Biggs in my hand. Like, what's next?
Yeah.
Like, is it Ducat with two Ks? I mean,
right.
I don't know where this is going to go.
Yeah, exactly. I do like, there's a good little bit when we're on the bridge with Chakotay and Lang, and he says, how do you like your first day as chief of security? It's everything I dreamed of, sir. And it's nice. Like, Star Trek is not a show that does sarcasm very often or very well. Yeah. So more of this, please. I thought that was cute.
I do like that. I did like that a lot. I thought the POV where B'Elanna, the doctor like transports her or translocates her like to the compound. Yeah. I like that we're seeing it from her point of view, and then all of a sudden you see Tom there, and like the world kind of like form around her. I thought that was a good effect. I thought
that was nice. Yeah. Oh, and hey, Cass. in the background.
Oh, hi, Cass.
just way back there, like, oh, yeah, she's still on the show now. Yeah, and it is funny, though, how it's like the Voyager crew got beamed to a less bro-y version of Club Bro Med. That's just where they end up. So the Nerians must have seen that place, and they're like, no, this is good. We'll go with this, just not as many bikinied people around. Yeah, that was the whole plan. Oh, and okay, I do not want this to come across as negative toward the actor, Nancy Youngblood, or toward Ensign Lang. I did think that bit with Chakotay was fun, but I was not buying her being in command on the bridge. I know we're not supposed to, really, because she's out of her element, but when the Nerians show up and she's telling people where to go, like that, her grasp of the command did not seem believable.
But I love that scene, and here's why.
Okay, all right.
Because all of a sudden, this person, like, she had that scene where she's like, yeah, this is great. And the only reason why I'm here is because everyone else disappeared, and she knows that, right? And then all of a sudden, Chakotay's gone, and then these people storm the bridge. She's like, what am I going to do now? Seriously.
Yeah.
Like, I'm going to fire my phaser, and then I'm going to get my $$ handed to me, right?
right.
But she takes down a few Nerians, and I'm like, okay, it's very lower decker stuff. I dig it.
She does, yeah. I need to. I think I need to like crank up, because now it's the 21st century. I need to like crank up the sarcasm on her even more. I need her to be like an Aubrey Plaza type, like an April Ludgate on Parks and Rec. I need her in that ensign role when things are just going to hell and she's having the worst day.
And now I can't see anyone
right?
Aubrey Plaza playing this role.
You're welcome.
Right?
Yeah.
So Chakotay, he walks into the holding cell. All of the Nerians are gone. Yeah. And I'm like, come on, man. I'm like, you can't. There's a level of incompetence that I'm going to talk about when it comes to this, but I'm like, it's so Keystone Cops-ish.
Yeah.
Like, Chakotay watching, like, why are all my prisoners gone? Like, of course they're gone.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Right?
What did you think was going to happen?
Yeah.
And then sabotage everything you can get your hands on, or sabotage.
Sabotage.
Yeah, sabotage everything you get your hands on, says Chakotay. So I want all the shots of any other crew members around doing stuff. Like, what were they doing? They're just in Neelix's kitchen, like kicking over cookware and like throwing pillows into the corridors out of their quarters. Like, I wanted all of that stuff too.
I don't know, like they're tossing drawers, like flipping over tables, right? They're rearranging chess pieces, stuff like that.
They're spray painting stuff on the windows. They're just being terrible. Yeah.
If the Nerians know how to use Voyager technology, how can they not pinpoint 2 officers wearing comm badges in the ship?
Yeah.
Well,
maybe that was one thing that Chakotay was able to disable. I don't know. Maybe.
We'll see.
He did do a very fast download of the EMH's entire program, though. I love it how he boots up the EMH, and this is like, I'm going to download all of you to the mobile emitter. Boom, door opens. That was very quick. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's like, that's interesting that he has that kind of expertise. I'll get into that maybe a little bit later. I get fixated on, and, I apologize, to the listeners who are like, Norm, really get over yourself, but I won't, because these are like small connective tissue pieces that make more sense if the logic holds, and in this case, it doesn't. So you have earlier when B'Elanna gets transported to the planet, the Nerian guards, they walk up to her, take her comm badge, and they're very particular about making sure that all of their prisoners are accounted for, unlike Chakotay in his room.
Right.
But all of a sudden now, Chakotay and the doctor are there, and the doctor's wearing a comm badge and something else on his uniform, and they don't address that at all.
Right. Yeah.
So what's that all about?
Yeah, there's got to be a better way to hide that hollow emitter or something. Yeah. And this would have been a very different episode pre-Future's End, where the EMH was stuck on board. You know? Yeah. Gotta say, those baskets of food that Janeway is bribing Jarlath with, I was trying to get a good look at it, couldn't really, but if I had to replicate that at home, I would say it kind of looks like chunks of dried fruit, like big pieces of dried fruit, and maybe popcorn balls in that other basket. I think, you would.
They looked like Jumja stick fruits.
It did, almost,
You know?
right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Somewhere along the line, they abducted Pete Schweddy. So
Yes,
if you get
they
that,
did.
you're welcome.
You're
Yeah.
welcome, everybody. Yeah, I don't mind squeezing in. Here I am again, back to B'Elanna, like squeezing in the character bits with the crew. But in this episode, I felt like hyping up B'Elanna's aggression felt a bit forced. And now in the confrontation with Tom, it feels even more so. But I am amused that they can shut off the EMH's voice. But then why can't he just reach over and turn it back on? Mm-hmm. You know?
Right.
I mean, so that was, it was a little earned bit of comedy, but he's standing there, just unable to open his mouth, or if he does, nothing comes out. But he literally points to the emitter and like, well, your finger's right there. You could just poke it.
I did kind of like the whole, like the doctor's like a counselor, and observing like relationships kind of thing. It was a good comedic bit.
It is.
When he does the comedic bit.
And it's totally in character for him, just to like insert himself and assume that he is needed in that conversation. Yeah. I agree with you there. Yeah. I do love that there's a great bit of exchange between Tuvok and Chakotay. So Tuvok's there constructing that second weapon out of just parts that they found, and Chakotay goes, "You're assuming the first one will work." Yes. Perfect,
right?
Tuvok. Like, never overwrite a moment when that one word will do. That was great.
I found it interesting, like in that entire conversation, like Chakotay, like saying, he's basically saying Vulcans are too rigid for interpretation or adaptation, or jazz or to glide, baby. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I think that Chakotay forgets, like, this is the guy that infiltrated your Maquis cell, right?
Yeah.
And he probably knew these tactics. He probably knows how to think on the fly. He probably knows how to make weapons out of junk, because that's what the Maquis did. You did too, Chakotay. So kind of like, slow your roll there, right?
Yeah, exactly. I did like the reference to the Rite of Taloth. I don't think we've heard that phrase before, but Tuvok surviving in the Vulcan wilderness for 4 months. It made me think of little Spock in Yesteryear.
Oh yeah,
right, being out there. Yeah, kind of a good moment.
Now I'm thinking of Aichaya, and now I'm sad.
Oh, I'm sorry.
So we'll get back to, this is what doesn't make me sad. It makes me a little irritated, though. So why not just take Jarlath's sensor and then make more of them, right? Instead of making weapons, make more sensors. So then you take like 10 people with 10 sensors and just walk around the place and just scan for openings.
Good point. Good point. I like that. I do have to say, from a production point of view, the Nerian version of Elcar's, like their computer interface, it looked like an afterthought.
Not great.
Not great.
Not great.
Because, the Star Trek really excels at creating a complete world out of design. And you have Federation Elcars, you have all the Cardassian stuff. But, that was just not good. Kind of 90s mall computer system, I do love, and I love how this is so easy for Tuvok. Like, I'll try to bypass the security codes. All right. Like, you literally have no idea what any of this says or how it works, but you can push buttons and you'll do it. Yep.
I have an entire diatribe on language plot armor in this episode because I have many things to say about it. Many things.
Nice.
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay. All right. I look forward to getting to that. I tried really hard. I do like to freeze frame and see details on screen. I tried really hard to read the computer display on the Nerian ship, and the details were pretty sketchy, but I swear it looks like in the Federation habitat, it said that it was 75 degrees Celsius, which would kill everybody in there. So
75 Celsius?
Celsius, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
That'd be very, very hot.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You'd come back and find a bunch of naked, unconscious Voyager crew members. Maybe that was the plan. I don't know.
So here's an interesting line that B'Elanna says. So B'Elanna says to Tom, shows how much you know about Klingons. They have much less tolerance for the cold than humans do. Okay, I get that, but for centuries, Klingons chose to mine and occupy the glacial planetoid of Rurapenthe as their prison colony?
Well, okay, so was that... Yeah, they were mining it, but did they set that up as a prison to further punish the Klingons who were sent there? Maybe.
That's a good question.
Maybe. I don't know.
You know? But it just seems like, I know they're like intolerant of cold, but they're on a frozen planetoid.
It's a poor place to choose
for a prison
to be anyway. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Here's the thing. If you're off duty and choose to go to a tropical resort environment on your off time, why do you stay in uniform?
We know he's got a Hawaiian shirt. We know they both do.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Gotta say, as we're racing toward the end here, when Tom and B'Elanna are in that frozen habitat and they overpower the two guards who are after them, Tom, B'Elanna, I'm only going to say this once. Listen to me. If you didn't learn this at the academy, take the weapons of your captors once they are incapacitated.
Yes.
You just do that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I saw that. They're freezing to death. They said, we have one shot. You know, even B'Elanna readjusted Tom's phaser and said, you got one shot left. Then they were able to take out one. The other one succumbed.
Yeah.
They both have weapons.
Get them.
Get them.
Just take them. But you know who does not need lessons in what to do and how to be a badass? And that is Janeway. Because she gets her moment in the penultimate scene of this show and just saying like, yeah, look, I've disabled your system. We could negotiate, or you guys could just die here. And that is Pete Janeway.
It seems likely that these people are also inviting themselves over for dessert and drinks afterward. Hope you stocked up.
We'll get right back to Distant Origin after a word from this week's sponsor, Factor.
You know, John, it's summer.
Yes, it is.
You know, and the one thing that we love during summertime is doing some, say, outdoor cooking.
Yeah, I love that.
We love outdoor cooking. And you all out there might be looking for wholesome, convenient meals for, you know, your sunny, active days. Well, Factor, America's #1 ready-to-eat meal kit, can help you fuel up fast with flavorful and nutritious, ready-to-eat meals delivered straight to your door. You'll save time, you'll eat well, and you'll stay on track reaching your fitness goals.
That's right, but I'm getting back into Speedo shape.
That's right.
That's my goal right there. And I love the speed and convenience of Factor meals because, look, if you're too busy, like me, maybe with summer plans to cook, but you want to make sure you're eating well, that's where Factor comes in because with Factor, you can skip that trip to the grocery store, skip the chopping, prepping, and cleaning up and all that stuff that just takes time, but you're still getting the flavor and nutritional quality that you need. Factor's fresh, never frozen meals are ready in just 2 minutes. That's it. 2 minutes. You're done. So all you have to do is heat and enjoy, then get back outside, soak up that warm weather. Now, if you are looking for calorie-conscious options this summer, again, you know, look at me trying to get back into Speedo shape. Try delicious, dietitian-approved, calorie-smart meals with around or maybe less than 550 calories per serving. That's pretty impressive for those meals to be that good and be that calorie smart. I love it.
Yeah, if you need that extra boost to support your wellness goals this summer, try Protein Plus meals with 30 grams of protein or more per serving. You can also elevate your fine dining at home with their upscale, yeah, I know, right? Surf and turf meal options like roasted garlic, filet mignon, and shrimp. And Cajun spiced shrimp and salmon. That sounds
nice.
Fabulous.
Little surf and surf together. I like that.
Exactly, yeah. And so Factor offers delicious, flavor-packed options on the menu each week to fit a variety of lifestyles. You have your keto lifestyle, calorie smart, vegan and veggie, and protein plus lifestyles. These are prepared by chefs and approved by dietitians, and each meal has all of the ingredients you need to feel satisfied all day long while meeting your fitness goals. And if you're looking to mix it up, you can add a protein to select, say, vegan and veggie meals each week.
I love it. I love how you can mix and match. You can choose from 34 plus chef-prepared, dietitian-approved weekly options featuring premium ingredients. And look, if you want to budget this month by cutting back on takeout, Get Factor instead. Not only is Factor cheaper than takeout, but meals are ready faster than restaurant delivery. Again, I said it before, 2 minutes. 2 minutes is all it takes. And with Factor, you can rest assured that you're making a sustainable choice, too. They offset 100% of their delivery emissions to your door, source 100% renewable electricity for their production sites and offices, and feature sustainably sourced seafood in their meals. Get Factor and enjoy eating well without the hassle. Simply choose your meals and enjoy fresh, flavor-packed meals delivered to your door ready. I said it before. I'm going to say it a third time, Norman. 2 minutes. 2 minutes, no prep, no mess.
So head to factormeals.com/missionlog50 and use code missionlog50 to get 50% off your first box. That's code missionlog50, the number 50, at factormeals.com/missionlog50 to get 50% off your first box.
I have to admit, the Nerians, pretty clever. This is a good ruse, don't you think? So you beam in, you just show up in a place, and you act like you have no idea what's going on. you act totally like picture it's 1961, and you're a spy, you're a Western spy, and you somehow you just get into like East Berlin, and you just like, wow, how'd I get here? Just play dumb, and it'll work.
Or you know what it's more like? It was like in Die Hard. It's like when Hans was about to get caught by McClane.
Yeah.
In the attic. He's like, "Oh, don't hurt me, please. Don't hurt me. You're one of them. You're one of them." He's like, "Calm down. I'm not one of them." And then you just establish this false pretense of, I'm a good guy, you're a good guy, let's be good guys.
Right? I don't think we've seen anything quite like that on Star Trek before. Certainly we have met, enemies who tried to be friends first, but this was a new kind of ruse, and I kind of liked it. And the whole time they're there, they're just gathering information to lay the groundwork for the invasion. Like, it's kind of cool. Here's partly what didn't make sense to me, though. The Nerians have highly advanced scanners. Obviously, they have this huge ship. Their transporters work, Tuvok and Janeway said they work like 10 light years away, which is translocator. Yeah, very good. Thank you. Way better than our puny transporters. They got translocators, which, by the way, they should have just taken that technology. Don't you think? Yeah. I mean, come on. Yeah. Just download a little of that from the database before you come back to Voyager. So they have all of this huge ship and the ability to program multiple environments and keep other species alive. But seemingly they don't have the ability to create the ships that they need for whatever perceived threat they're facing. Now, I'll dig a little deeper into that in just a second, but it just seems like they spend a lot of time on their clever obfuscation, but they can't think their way out of whatever predicament they're already in. I'm going to say they're like slightly better Pac-Leds in that way, right? Right? I mean, think about it. Like Pac-Leds show up, and you go like, oh, well, they're just kind of helpless and harmless, and we'll do what we can for them, But meanwhile, the Pac-Leds are just gathering whatever they can. But Pac-Leds have no good sense of long-term strategy. They have no good sense of motivation. They're just like, we want the thing, so we're going to take that thing, and then we'll use this other thing to protect that thing that we just got. Like there's, yeah,
that's a great point. And I think like with the Nerians, they're kind of like the spider web, right? They're attracting all these flies, and Voyager gets caught in their web. And I think that they're good with that. It's a model that they're comfortable with, that they have expertise with, and they have a really good kind of network of being able to obviously reconnaissance and spy on ships that are 10 light years away, and download their information and understand their people and find their security holes, et cetera, and then all of a sudden they can start infiltrating the ship again in this very kind of benign way. And I think it's if the model ain't broke, don't fix it, right? It seems like it works for them because they had some 90 species.
Well, they had
like that,
94 environments, so potentially that many species. Yeah,
and I can't help to think this is almost kind of like an anti-caretaker kind of station that they're on, right? You know, like if the caretaker got bent and all of a sudden started like stealing all of these ships, all of these species, and then kind of like making a zoo out of like all these species, right? And then these people are like the Nerians are like absconding with these people's technologies and et cetera, et cetera. But here's my problem with all of that. It's not with the Nerians at all. And if I said Nemerians, it's because I'm a Game of Thrones fan and I know Nymeria, blah, blah, blah. My biggest problem with all of that is it's either the Nerians are incredibly, incredibly smart, or Voyager is incredibly naive.
Oh, okay.
Right?
Well, how do you think that Voyager are incredibly naive, if that's the way we're going to go with it?
Okay, so and I'm saying this, I'm not talking about Voyager itself. I'm talking about like how Star Trek kind of, they have this very subtle naivete, sometimes not so subtle, about how their stories unfold. So here's a question. It's rhetorical, but not. Is it me, or am I just so fixated on a ship being 75,000 light years from home in a quadrant of unknown space, literally surrounded by life-threatening aliens and possible death at every turn? And here I am as a viewer just wanting maybe a little bit more of an appropriate security response to any alien that shows up on the ship.
Old man beams in, shoot to kill.
Something. I'm talking about an appropriate response, but all of a sudden they're like, Tom and B'Elanna are in the hallway. They see an alien. They're like, would you like some water? Are you okay? As opposed to stay there. We're going to sit, we're going to sort this out. Because think about it this way. That was the response that Tom and B'Elanna gave Damar, in this situation. But when they saw Gagan and Veer in the previous episode of Distant Origins, they freaked out. They caught them, they stunned them, and they threw them in jail. Well, I mean, they did with Veer, not Gagan. That was just an episode ago. So which is it? Are you going to appropriately respond to, people that infiltrate, and invade your ship? Or are you going to just say, everything's cool? I mean, we're disappearing, but they're appearing, but we're just going to stick them in a holding cell. We might even let them walk the ship. Who knows?
Right.
Why is it that way? Why is it so inconsistent to the point where you as an audience member, and you people out there are smart, right? But you're watching this, you're like, where is security in all of this? Why isn't there some type of lockdown when literally, I don't know, 25% of the crew, including several key members of the bridge staff, are gone?
Yeah. Well, that's the really worrisome part. Yeah. But I mean, literally, you should have force fields up everywhere all the time now, if that's happening.
And then when the captain disappears, why isn't that ship just shut the F down? Because it's the captain. You're like, well, we don't know where she went.
There's got to be a key to the warp core that somebody can just take out and swallow, or
right? And that should be Chakotay.
Yeah. I mean, that was cool though. I did like that they shut down the warp core at a certain point, but then of course the Nerians got it back up and running as they race back to their prison ship. Yeah,
but that's what I mean though. Where is the threshold of when things have gone beyond the point of, or past the point of no return?
Yeah.
Right, to the point where Chakotay walks into a holding cell of hundreds of Nerians. They're like, where did they all go? What happened? How did I lose control of literally more people than
it's
my
like instant
own
red
people?
alert, instant force fields, done.
Yeah. Right?
Yeah. Good point.
So that's where I like, it kind of grates me where I'm like, Why does Star Trek always, not always, that's not fair to say, but why, at least in Voyager, do they position our leadership to a point where it's almost inconceivable that they're that naive?
Yeah. Maybe, just to give them the benefit of the doubt here, let's think through maybe part of the situation here. We've seen episodes of, say, Next Gen, where Picard has no hesitance to risk the Enterprise, to blow it up. Janeway's done that too, of course, But maybe the stakes get played differently here because there's only 148 of them, and they are so far away from Earth that it's like, well, if we're too risky even in our ability to fight back, does that mean that then we have an easier time of losing the ship to somebody or not succeeding in our ultimate mission, which is to get home. And that's just giving me a little bit of benefit of the doubt there. But yeah, at a certain point, if I'm Chakotay, I'm like, I just start opening airlocks on floors, on decks where there are no more Voyager crew members, and it's just Nerians like, no, you out of here.
I think that to look at it like a little bit more realistically, like, again, sometimes we put this, question out there, or look at the model of if this were real. And, and it's not like the captain was the last person to go. Chakotay was the last person to go, and lucky for Voyager, because he seems to be the only person that could put countermeasures against the Nerians on the ship. But once the captain is abducted, it doesn't matter if it was the Nerians, it doesn't matter if it was some other cause, but the captain's been abducted. That ship is now vulnerable and needs to be secured.
Yeah, 100%.
Why doesn't that happen time and again on this show? That drives me banana sandwich.
Very true. All right, I want to look at the Nerians from a slightly different angle here, because I compared them to Pakleds. Yes, I did. But now I want to do this. Now I want to look at them the way we look at the Kazon. Remember them from way, way, way back when? Beginning of the season.
John, are you going back to basics?
Oh, literally? Man. Well done.
Thank you.
Well done.
You're welcome.
Yes,
Everyone applaud.
All right. So think of it this way. The Kazon were obsessed with gaining and then protecting territory. Like that's the whole thing. And they've created this system that propagates their own problem in that way, because once they have territory, they have to protect it. And once that area is protected, well, then they're going after another territory that a less protective Kazon has, and they're never able to kind of negotiate and collaborate in a really constructive way. So that is a problem of their own making. So let's look at the Nerians then. Something really dark and disturbing about the fact that we know so little about their motivation. So, in other words, the way that they said it in there, your vessel will be used to defend Nerian acquisitions. That is so perfectly but frustratingly logical. They acquire things, then they need to acquire more things to defend the acquisition. That's it. That's all we have out of them, right, about their motivation.
It's very Ferengi.
It is, but this is a vicious cycle that they have created for themselves, and nobody seems to have been able, in whatever history of the Nerians that we have, whatever taste that we get here, nobody has been able to step outside of their own system for long enough to size it up and see if that's necessary. Like, how much more acquisition do you need to do to protect the acquisitions you already have? Like, at what point have you already acquired enough things that are satisfactory to have and also are already protective of the things that you have? So I don't think that this was an intended message of the story, but it really had me thinking about how we justify things like spending for military interests. Think we spend huge amounts of money continuing to build weapons to defend against threats, some of them real, some of them perceived, and then we keep justifying year after year the need to build more, because now that we have some, those enemies have also built more to protect against our threat. And he rinse, repeat, and never, ever be the first one to flinch and break that cycle. Like that is the real problem there. Now, the purpose of this story is just to get the hell out. Like that's what the Voyager crew needs to do, just get out of there and disable them long enough to get a head start. Part of me wants to see a version of this where Janeway gets to give a Kirk speech to, first of all, size these people up, tell them what is wrong with their system, and then get out of there after stealing their translocator technology.
That's a great point, and I think that one of the scenes that we were missing, and I'm sure it would have been really expensive budget-wise, is to see what the Nerians acquired. Where are their stores? Did they acquire? I mean, I'm sure they acquired a significant amount of technology. Perhaps even kind of like the zoo that they've created was maybe built on stolen technology from other races. Maybe that's just their culture. They started acquiring, disseminating, understanding, learning, replicating, and then all of a sudden building upon this technology that they have a rudimentary understanding of. So all of a sudden you have this zoo, and you're creating all of these different, cages. Hey, look at that, Star Trek. All these cages to study all these different species in order to understand the technology that the Nemerians have appropriated.
It'll happen.
It's such a stumbling block for me. So that's something that would have been really interesting, or at least it would have been interesting for their leadership to talk about. We don't know any better. And it would have been interesting if Janeway kind of like on Eminar, to say we're going to break this cycle where you can no longer appropriate these things because you yourself as a society are stagnant. You have to grow. You can't grow if you are just appropriating other cultures, technology, and civilizations, right? You have to create one for yourself. Well, how do we do that? We don't know.
Yeah, because that growth is literally just the accumulation of more stuff. It is just getting bigger, but not getting better as far as we can tell.
And we can see that, if you've heard stories about, thieves stealing a bunch of technology. What are they going to do with it? They don't know how to use it.
Yeah.
You have to fence it, right? So, and it would have been interesting if these people were fencing things to other species in the Delta Quadrant, like the Vidians, like the Kazon, like the Trade, et cetera, et cetera. This was their hub. We steal things in order for us to just, enrich our own culture by selling off technology to other races. So that would have been interesting too. But I think that somewhere along the line, it was an interesting idea. The Nerians are an interesting idea, but somewhere in the script, we needed to find space to dive deeper into them. Mm-hmm. Right? It just felt like, I hate to say it, but they're a very villain of the week.
They are, but there's something that still sticks with me, that I'm okay with the idea because, again, of the flawed perfect logic. It was Talene saying, we acquire these things to essentially defend our acquisitions. I was like, well, you can't argue with that. That's just what they do because they are motivated because of the motivation they created from it is this self-perpetuating cycle. It would have been interesting to know what else they have beyond that. But I don't know. There's something so sinister about being lost in that cycle.
But what happens, and unless their translator, unless their ability to observe and record and study and disseminate other cultures, from 10 light years or further away, what would happen if they actually appropriated technology, or assets from a race that is far superior to them? Is that something that they're probably looking at more easier targets of opportunity, but how would they know that?
Right.
If they don't really understand the technology that they're appropriating, quote unquote.
And breakfast. They're staying over for breakfast too, and maybe lunch. What are your thoughts on brunch?
So here we are at the end of Displaced, and one of the things I think that we have done well, John, is we've displaced some of the discussion for now. So we can talk about what we do in Mission Log. We talk about does the episode first stand the test of time? Does it hold up? And then, does it have any morals or meanings or messages that we've been able to mine in the episode? So
look, we had discussion in Dat Place. Now we're going to have discussion in Displace about.
Hey, Dat Place, Displace.
Exactly,
Hey, how you doing? Bada bing, bada boom.
Right. Yeah. All right. Displaced. Does it hold up? Well, what's interesting to me is that just purely from a production point of view, I think this episode does some stuff very well, which is to convey size without actually having to show everything. We talked before how Star Trek will do this very Shakespearean thing where the action is off stage. And then you have the reaction to that or the lead up to that on stage. And, we did something very well last week with the city ship and Distant Origin. You actually show that entire ship and you show the size of everything. But this time you have these small spaces, but our actors and our imagination sell the idea that this is a massive ship that they're trapped in, you know, all these different environments and everything. And this is a pretty ambitious script on the surface when you look at it and you see, okay, well, we have to sell this with all these different physical places where they are. And even if on a TV budget in 1997, you can't make that absolutely epic. And I think they still did a nice job with that. You kind of peek through those portals, you know, wow, there's the desert environment, and here's the frozen environment, and here's our less bro-y club bro med for the Federation, you know. And then you have these little narrow corridors and, you know, tiny little control room. But we know that we haven't even gotten to the bridge of this thing. So what you see on the giant ship is the schematic and just the reaction of the actors going, whoa, we're in something much bigger. So this production, this specific episode, is this exercise in compromise. Like, if you can't afford a bunch of prosthetics, you put your aliens in hats, all right? Because we spent a bunch of money on prosthetics in Distant Origin. And you can spend some money on different environmental set pieces, but then you won't have the fancy exterior shots of a brand new ship that is, you know, many times larger than Voyager. So it's interesting to see them navigate everything that they need to do to actually tell this story. Now, the story itself, I think, has something that I've liked in Voyager pretty frequently, which is this old school pulpy science fiction feel to it. You have all these different species, including our crew, which is also made up of multiple species, trapped by aliens, put into this kind of zoo, and then they need to get out. And that would also work on TNG. It works on TOS. I appreciate that.
As a cage of sorts, John?
A cage of sorts. Maybe that was it. Maybe I've seen this before. You know? So I don't mind going back to the well for something like that, where you take a general idea and say, how could we come at this from a little bit different angle? What if this happens to this crew instead of that crew? Because their needs, their motivations are a little bit different. Now, at the end of the day, it's really not the most consequential story. It kind of has that old school sci-fi feel to it. Is it great and memorable Star Trek? Maybe not. But I also kind of like an ending with a heroic shot of Janeway with her finger on the button, one-upping her captors. So there's something very satisfying about that. I can't give this episode a pass to say, wow, this will live up there with episodes like Distant Origin or Unity that just make me think this is a show firing on all cylinders. But I do think it's a show that works very well with the limitations that it has. So this is a marginal, this is maybe one of those 50%. Does it hold up? Does it not hold up? Might depend on the day of the week you catch me. How about you?
Yeah, I mean, I love how you phrase that, because I think that's where I am with this. Maybe if I saw it in a different light or a different time or a different setting. But this episode, it's just frustrating for me. You know, because I'm trying to figure out like what story it's trying to tell, and I can't. And I think I'm trying to find more consistency in Voyager episode to episode, and that I think is probably one of the more frustrating points right now, because I think my biggest issue is this: Voyager episodes up until now, they just have this weird way of kind of like conveying this blanket trust that Janeway and Chakotay and the leadership crew have towards like the alien of the week, right? Because being in the Delta Quadrant, I think that we understand it's dangerous. And she's been proven, she being Janeway, has been proven time and again that her instincts, her optimism, her Starfleet way have been proven wrong. And I want her to learn and grow from that. And how many allies has she actually secured in these 3 years of trying to get home?
Now I know
that people are out. No, certainly not the trade. And I know people out there are saying, like, well, the Starfleet way is to try. I understand that completely. It is easier to do that, though, in the Alpha Quadrant, and even in some cases, the Gamma Quadrant, where there is a Starfleet presence, where there are Starfleet resources and Starfleet diplomacy. But this is the Delta Quadrant. And as far as my experience has been with this series, Janeway has been wrong on many occasions and has lost crew people on many occasions, and this is no exception, because you have an episode where literally not only her, but many officers, her senior officers and crewmen, were being absconded or stolen by these Nerians, and because they trusted them. At the start.
Yeah.
They didn't put security protocols in place where, like, wait, hey, you know what? 3 or 4 of our crew members have been, I don't know, they disappeared. Well, we don't know if it's the Nerians that have caused this. We don't know if it's another power that have caused this. But hey, you know what? We should probably be really, like, locked down and secure about how we move forward, as opposed to, let's just see how many people disappear in the next few minutes, right? Because that's, a good way of going about things. So, I mean, the Delta Quadrant's dangerous, right? You have to learn this. We've learned this as the audience. Why isn't our crew learning this?
Right.
So, and it's getting a little old. I mean, it's kind of like, it's getting past that point of just hand wave it. You'll learn the moral meaning or message. You'll learn that they've learned and no one's really been hurt. And sure, we've lost a shuttle or we've lost 1 or 2 extraneous cast members. No big deal, no harm, no foul. But that gets old.
Yeah.
You want them to learn. You want them to be defensive about where they are. You don't want them to lose the Starfleet optimism. You don't want them to lose their way. But at the same time, though, they have to be realistic in order for us to buy into the fact that this is a real situation. If not, then it's just pablum.
Yeah.
Right? It's just a way of saying, hey, here's the optimistic tale of the story. And if you don't like it, well, too bad, because it's still optimistic. No, it's not.
Right.
It's not. Right?
Right.
So I just want a little bit more gravitas. I want a little bit more grit. I want a little bit more realism. I want a little bit more, hey, you know what? In the previous episode, they were really secure about their issues with alien invaders, with the Voth. And in this episode, they could have cared less until it got to a point where somebody had to care. And by that point, it was too late. But they got out of it anyway, so hey, what do I know?
Yeah. All right.
So that's kind of like where I am with that.
Okay. All right.
Well, by the way, not to kind of like, not to pimp our own Patreon, but
it's our show. We can do that.
I also have a huge diatribe of plot armor when it comes to language and language barriers and the issue with language in Voyager and in Star Trek. So if you want to hear that, please subscribe to our Patreon.
Do that.
Because it's on the uncut version of our video.
There you go. Perfectly said. Perfect. Well, look, morals, meanings, messages. I think we're both saying maybe this episode is a little light in that area. And I'm trying to go through point by point and figure out, is there something to really learn, something that is a you see to me moment. Haven't used that phrase in a while. And I don't know if there's that much to be made out of Jarlath. He's a coward. Or at the very least, he's the guy who wants to go along to get along. I don't know that there's much to be made out of the gilded cage is still a cage, because we learned that from what was the episode about the cage? The Cage. The Cage.
I've heard about that.
Yes, yeah, that's the
it's
one.
About a cage.
About a cage, yeah.
Yeah.
And even with like the B'Elanna anger management issues, I think that's fine to help build her camaraderie with Tom. And yes, that was a funny moment with Harry. But is there a really deep insight there? Not necessarily. I think it's just kind of fun character stuff to build around them. But maybe it's all right to not have a huge moral meaning or message here. I mean, Voyager gets hijacked. Our crew needs to escape their confines. Let the action ensue. And if you want to dig a little deeper, go back to the last segment. Hear my notes. The Nerians could stop this vicious cycle if they just stopped this vicious cycle. Like that is an option for them. But as we very much understand as humans who are trapped in all kinds of unfortunate systems, we don't always have the foresight or the power to do that. Is that really what this episode is about? Don't necessarily think so, but I think that's one of the tragic problems of the Nerians. What about you, Norman?
Well, I mean, I agree, and you kind of you made a very specific point of, does it have to be a moral meaning or message episode? Not every single episode is going to have one. Yeah. I didn't find anything really profound from this episode. I think it's kind of like the standard run of the mill, paint by numbers, Die Hard kind of episode. Trade in air ducts for environmental control corridors. You trade Nakatomi Plaza for Voyager.
Yes,
right.
Yes.
I do like that Janeway has this. This kind of like this standoff moment where she said, to the Nerian leaders, or to Damara and the Doctor, you either give up and stop doing this, or we'll treat you to the same kind of treatment that you've treated other peoples that you've captured. So like, okay, that's standard run of the mill kind of moral meaning, message, consequence, but it doesn't mean that it's original. It doesn't mean that it's as meaningful. A critique that I guess I would have to levy against this episode is that I've seen other series and or movies or stories that have done this episode and have done it better. I mean, it's pretty obvious, like what you're seeing in this episode. It's pretty paint by numbers, but for me, nothing really special.
Fair. Mission Log is produced by Roddenberry Entertainment. If you'd like to support us directly, you can do so at patreon.com/missionlog for early access to shows and the Mission Log Discord. Our website is missionlogpodcast.com, and for more Star Trek news and discussion, visit trekmovie.com.
On the next Mission Log, worst case scenario.
Some of the music for Mission Log provided by Warp 11, online at warp11.com. Special thanks to consulting producers, Adam Brusky, Matt Esposito, Homer Frizzell, John Mann, Mike Richards, and Mike Schabel. And just like that, they're already gone. It's just as well. I compute a high probability that they were lousy tippers too. End transmission.
This is a Roddenberry podcast. For more great podcasts, visit podcast.roddenberry.com.